Good afternoon. Today I'll be refuting the claim that mass incarceration negatively affects the country. My opponent previously stated that mass incarceration is a negative effect on this country. He gives the claims as follows. Number one, the cost of housing the inmates for long periods of time affects the taxpayers who are paying to house them. Number two, how mass incarceration affects the future generations. And number three, how it will affect the people who have already done their time once they are let out of prison. My first claim to refute this proposition is that there should be no price tag on keeping criminals in prison. In 1971, President Richard Nixon set a precedent for crimes related to drugs. This precedent consisted of harsh punishments from 15 years to life imprisonment. To imprison these people, here's where he used the taxpayers' dollars to house them for long periods of time. According to Brian Kincaid, editor of Smart Asset, over the last 40 years, the punishment for drug-related crimes has lessened, which does not take much of the taxpayers' dollars, and due to the lesser punishment of drug-related crimes. So the way that they fix this is being placed on parole or probation does not take any of the taxpayer money. The Bureau of Justice Statistics came out with the information that crimes related to drugs is at 26.4%. So when they're on parole or on probation, it does not take any of the taxpayer money. In comparison to violent crimes that will keep someone in prison that does take the taxpayer money is at 16.6%. My second claim to argue that imprisonment affects future generations, that my opponent claimed that the parents who become imprisoned do not have the proper ability to raise their kids. Rutgers University states that 1 in 28 children will have one parent in their lifetime that is incarcerated. Those who fall into this statistic have alternatives for their kids, like a caregiver, which is the most common, public assistance, like foster care, or someone who has the ability and legality to raise their child. Lastly, to refute the claim that prison time affects a felon once they are out of prison is that they are unable to get efficient jobs. A solution to this problem is that small businesses are able to receive tax revenues if they hire previous inmates, according to Ventana, which is a small business magazine. A previously incarcerated man, Eltzer Darris, describes his life after prison. Darris was fortunate to look at older inmates who received their GED. Darris was in prison, was inspired and finished his high school education and later received an associate's degree in arts and happily married a woman that he was in correspondence with while he was incarcerated. To argue the claim that felons are unable to get jobs, Darris, like many others, are fortunate that the prison system actually aligned them with jobs as soon as they walk out the gates of the penitentiary. Darris landed his job selling magazines and began collecting a paycheck 1 week after he was released. My opponent also claimed that felons are unable to partake in voting rights once they are released. This may be the law and it may never be changed, but looking further into the legal aspects of voting rights for felons, their voting rights are restored after 2 years of being released and can re-register to vote as a law-abiding citizen. In conclusion, once released from prison, felons have the ability and opportunity to better their life, and this is up to them if they want to take these opportunities and continue at a second chance.
Okay. I guess I'm only going to be talking to one person because, that last minute is so important. Holy criminy. All right. The structural stuff is all fine. You get to the first point, there's kind of a history lesson about what is this?
The outline. I did not speak to the board.
Oh, okay. Well, I got to worry about that later. Okay. We got the history lesson on this. There's an argument that says that the penalties have actually gone down, that there are plenty of alternatives where they're going to parole or probation as an alternative to going to prison. It was not clear to me what your statistics meant. I mean, I got two statistics about 26% for drug laws, 16% for violent crimes, and I'm going, and what do those numbers mean? I don't understand what the argument is that you're making here. So you've presented some evidence that you believe supports a position that you're taking, but I don't know what that evidence means, and I don't know how it supports that particular position. So that needs to be clarified and explained. On the second issue concerning their ability to raise kids and future generations, that sort of thing, you mentioned that kids in this situation do have alternatives. They have other guardians. They have potentially foster care, which I'm not exactly sure is all that great, public assistance. It might be a good argument to say maybe it's a good idea that somebody who is committing drug offenses and is engaged in criminal activities is not raising their child. There might in fact be an inference here that they are potentially problematic as parents, and that taking the kids away from them or not having them in their lives is perhaps beneficial. I think that the advocate has made an assumption here that they haven't demonstrated is necessary, that the kids have access to these incarcerated parents in order to be successful human beings in the long run. And I'm not sure that the alternatives that you're talking about are the best ones, but there are some that might fit into play more effectively. And then the jobs issue, I thought that you had a couple of good arguments here suggesting that prisons often offer jobs to prisoners upon their release. You've got an example of a prisoner who took advantage of getting a GED and an AA, and how their life has been successful as a consequence. So you've got counter examples that demonstrate this. I don't know what the advocate's evidence was on this point, because there's largely not any reference to what the advocate's arguments on these points are. There's just mostly counterclaims that you're presenting. All right, thank you.